Hello, today I will be covering a brush replacement on a Milwaukee router, model number 5616-20 with serial number starting with A19A. So to get into this, I was working on it the other day and it was not running correctly, and then it stopped running altogether. So we're going to take off the depth adjustment at the top here. And I'm working with a T25 Torx 25-bit. That'll take most of the screws out of here. And if you don't have a Torx 25, you can also make do with a straight screwdriver. Maybe a 1/4 inch straight screwdriver, because these screws do have a slot in the top of them. You can see that. And then we're going to remove the motor cap here, taking out another 4. Now that this is free, the motor cap will lift straight off the top, and just know that your switch on the side here is going to slide downward, and there's your motor cap. Now I looked up the parts online, and you can see exactly where the old brushes used to be, and their little wires are broken off completely right there. That's something that you can see very well. That's the brush wire, and this side I haven't taken the brush out of yet. It's actually hanging up in there, but here's where the wire is attached, and then right down inside there you can still see the brush. So we're going to take that out of there in a second. I'm going to take the router base off, so we'll depress the quick adjust here, and then slide this whole thing up and out of the router base. Now what we just did is we took the motor out of the router base, and then I also want to take the casing out. We'll lay that down over there. The reason I took the rotor out is because it's easier to push the old brushes straight through and into the center here. There we go. That one slid right out. You can see how worn down that brush is. And then we'll remove the old brush wire off the top there, and that's just on a little miniature spade terminal. And those brushes sit down, and it's actually connected to the outside of the brush tube is where that's connected. So we'll take those out. And I got on e-replacement parts the other day, typed in my model number and verified the serial number, and we ordered a few parts. The brushes that I ordered are a Milwaukee part 22-16-0410, and I got a couple of those, and I got a main ball bearing for the bottom of the motor. That was starting to make some sound, but I'll do that in another video here. Open these up. Okay, so a carbon brush. You'll notice that there's a wire attached to the back of it, and this is the front of the brush that goes against the rotor, so that's going to go into my brush tube first. And in order to do that, there's a spring on the side here. That's a brush spring, and I'm trying to figure out the best way to pull that out of there, or just get it set out of the way. That's what holds tension on your brush to keep it against the rotor of the motor. don't necessarily want to take it off its little mount there because it is tensioned. So what I think I'll do, yep, is I'll just retract that with a screwdriver, and we'll just tuck it down to this one side. See how I kind of pulled that spring out of there? And it's just tucked down on the outside of the brush tube. Now it's important before we go much further on to get the rotor of the motor stuck back up in there. So we're going to do that now. The reason for that is when we insert our brushes, if the rotor is not in place, the brush will just slide straight on through and won't be up against the contacts on the motor. Okay. So now that we have that in place, there we go, all the way up in. I'm going to take a brush and insert it right into the brush tube, let it slide down in there with the wire facing upward, and then release this spring with my thumb on the side there. And that's released. And now that's resting up against the rotor inside the motor. And then, I don't know if you can see this very well, there's the connection right here that needs to be bent down and hooked. Let's see, let's do it this way. Right there on that spade terminal. Oops. There we go. Tried to do that without bending it too much. And that's right on the spade terminal on the side of the brush tube. Okay, now we're just going to repeat for this side. So there's the open brush tube on that side. And I want to retract that little brush spring, oops, out to the outside. Yeah, that's a little bit tricky. Like that. Good. And we're going to just take it and slide it with the wire side out. Well, there goes that brush spring again. Well, let's try and reset that. Okay, we'll hold that down out of the way this time. And we'll slide this brush right in here with the wire side out towards us. Good. Okay, and then release that spring right on there. Now, we have to twist this down, and we'll push it right on top of the spade terminal. I realize that you cannot see that. There we go. Let's get that set right down on there. And just kind of wiggle it back and forth until it gets set all the way down on there. Just like it should be. There we go. So, see if I can get that to focus for you. So now the spring is on the outside of the brush, and the brush wire is connected up to the side there. So now we're ready to go back together. We'll get our motor cap back out here and place it over the top, making sure it doesn't snag on anything, and then making sure that we line up the switch on this side so it slips right down over that. Has a nice positive feel all the way around, and then we're just going to reverse the process that we had done before. Just take that down to kind of where it stops. Depth adjustments back in place. That should be it. Now we're going to do a really quick test run and see if we can't get this thing to fire up for us. Okay, so you might want to watch your ears on your headphones. Okay, so here's our test run on the motor. I'm going to fire it up on a number 1 setting on the speed. Alright. It's running really nicely now, and I'm pretty happy with the work that we've done. Got it all running and working nicely. So one thing to note, I was in this motor a little bit earlier and checking the top bearing on the motor, and I took the tachometer off the top. So if you ever get into that situation, just make sure you put the tachometer on the right way. When I first fired this motor up, it fired and then it would stop running because it wasn't getting an input from the tachometer. So went back into the motor, took the tachometer off, flipped it over, just the way the parts diagram from ereplacementparts.com shows, and then it worked beautifully again. That's all I have for now. That was a brush replacement on a Milwaukee 5616-20 router. And the next thing that I'm going to do in another video is show you how to replace the main bearing right down at the bottom of the motor.